on that globe and choose English or French. And let's go into today's agenda. So you can see on the screen an overview of today's agenda. Very similar to yesterday, we'll be spending most of our time in breakout groups. And at the end of the time together, we'll have some time to review our prioritized recommendations. So just as a reminder, we discussed topics number 1 and number 2 yesterday. So that was the TOC is a complex picture of the activity and socialization of the TOC. And we discussed enablers and challenges for both topics, and then prioritized some key recommendations. So we'll get back to those later today, and you'll get to revisit them. So we also reviewed the feedback from our session yesterday, and we made some adaptation to today's event, especially in terms of creating fewer and more clear recommendations to prioritize after each breakout session. So we're hoping that that prioritization exercise will be a little bit more fluid today. At the end of the day today, we'll have some time in plenary to look back at the prioritized recommendations from each topic and sort them into clusters in order to get a set of recommendations that can be considered, acted on, or implemented in order to improve the use of TOCs and implementation. So let's look at the topics that we're going to be tackling today. You can see them there on the screen. The first topic is the interdependent relationship between the learning agenda, the M&E system, and the TOC provides a rich amount of data to inform adaptations, but analyzing data and prioritizing adaptations is still quite difficult. And then the last topic is bringing people together for TOC review is valuable, but resource and time intensive and can feel ineffectual if proposed changes are not met with flexibility and timely approval. So let's just dig into those a little bit deeper and go over just some high level points of what we mean by each of those themes. So data from the M&E system, and by data from the M&E system, we mean things like routine monitoring, annual surveys, context monitoring, those types of data sources. So data from the M&E system and studies outlined in the learning agenda are pretty important when considering changing context and activity performance during the TOC review process. It really informs that, that review process. But teams really struggle with sifting through all of that data, especially all the data coming from the refine and implement period. They also struggle a bit with gathering the right kinds of data and then also prioritizing adaptations. We also heard that tools to organize quantitative and qualitative data and strong, capable, and collaborative M&E and CLA teams are very helpful in ensuring the best use of data to inform the TOC review process and activity adaptation. So that's the first theme that we'll be tackling in breakout groups. And then we'll go to the next slide and just take a quick look at the last theme that we'll be looking at today. So all activity teams review the TOC at least annually, as outlined by BHA M&E guidance, and they find the exercise useful and valuable. But approaches and processes for the TOC review, they vary across activities. So people have different approaches to this, to the actual review process. Planning and organizing the data for the TOC review is quite time intensive, and depending on how the review is conducted, it can also be resource intensive as well. Teams feel unsure about what level of flexibility is acceptable when they're considering changing the logic in their TOC and potentially creating corresponding activity adaptations. Also, the approval process for proposed adaptations that are gleaned from the TOC review process is quite time consuming, which can sometimes feel demotivating to teams. So those are the different topics that we're going to be reviewing today. And what I'm going to do now is hand it over to Suzanne to get us started in our first breakout room.
All that we are leaving this consultation with, and it's not all that you will, we're going to leave you with as well. So, we will, Ideal will write a report on the stakeholder consultation process, the qualitative outreach results, and this event, including a summary of the discussions and recommendations. And we're going to share that with all participants on the FSN, and as well, we will post it on the FSN network. So of course, we're going to review in much more detail all of the recommendations that were provided during this consultation. Some of them may be duplicative, some of them may be best practices, but please be assured that we will do our best to continue to capture your feedback and recommendations. We may even be coming back to you for clarifications as we're writing that report out to make sure that we've captured everything. So there are a lot of great and ideas and content that were shared throughout these 2 days, and we want to make sure that more than just the people who are able to participate were able to benefit from those sharings. So IDEAL and BHA will continue to dialogue around the prioritized recommendations, and as feasible and allowable recommendations will move forward. And about 6 months, IDEAL will share a brief progress update on the status of recommendations. But finally, I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to each of you for your participation. And then I'm going to hand over to Joan for some closing remarks. So please, so Joan Whalen, we all know is the Senior Learning Advisor and Applied Learning Team Lead for BHA, and I'll hand it over to you, Joan.
Thanks. Thanks, Suzanne. And I really don't have anything formal to say, except just to really underscore how important BHA finds these kinds of consultations with our partner community. Many of you took part in focus group discussions, and we had the opportunity, many people that were not even able to make this event, just reading the input from that focus group discussion had, me and many of our colleagues feeling like, there are real concrete things we can move forward from and try to make this process better. And of course, it only became more rich in understanding over the last 2 days. We thank you really for coming and bringing your opinions and your vast experience and your willingness to share across countries. I always think it's really extraordinary to be able to sit in a room. I mean, in my case, to witness and take part in conversations, with people from, different continents from across the world in different time zones with different perspectives and different experience, and all coming together and sharing with that collective focus. How do we make this better? How do we all share, a consensus around the value and where there are obstacles and what we can do to make it better in the future? And I think, I think there are some really clear, concrete steps. There are some real important principles that we can all adhere to, and even specific concrete steps that each of us can go back and take. And so I do pledge that BHA is going to pay close attention to the report that emerges. We are going to come together with those that were able to attend, as well as those who were not able to make the time, and really think through what we can do on our part. And I hope that each of you go back to your organizations to really think through what you've learned from one another and how you can work to improve processes at the activity level to, support implementation through a theory of change. And, I think there's just a huge list of potential actions for the future that IDEAL and PCS have heard so much that's going to help shape their work plans in the future. So it's all to say thank you so much. Without your presence and your willingness to share so openly, this wouldn't be possible. So thanks.
Thank you, Joan.